existing conditions inventory and analysis. We got a few comments back. And I'm going to have Samantha go over that. Other parts of the agenda is once we go through that, we're going to focus then with Kirsten to start with somewhat to get some more thoughts. I know you had a lot of kind of open discussion last time, but Kirsten's going to use her drawing talents to really kind of think about how can we visualize some of these concepts. Again, this is just rough. It's going to help interpret and help us inform when we do a little bit more of the actual design drawings. And then we'll wrap up towards the last part of the meeting to give you an update on the stakeholder interviews that have already started, but we're going to be really hitting that hard next week. And Samantha will give an update on that. And then we're trying to schedule our 2-day workshop. Our little bit of challenges is finding the space that's open for 2 days in a row. So we'll have to figure that out. It's been a little bit of a challenge, but we're still working through that. And then we'll talk about what's coming forward with our next committee meeting, which we anticipate would be in May. So Samantha, anything you want to touch base on just to start off, or you just want to jump into the existing conditions?
I think, well, a couple of things that I want to touch on before that, but I think that was a great intro. I do just want to flag there was a request to record these meetings, so I have started recording the meetings, and those will be available on the township website. But yeah, quick, I just want to touch base about the progress and process that's happened since we last met with you last month. So the work that we've done, as Troy mentioned, we are deep into scheduling stakeholder interviews, by groups of stakeholders with like common interests, but then also with individual stakeholders. So we have a lot of interviews scheduled with community groups, adjacent property owners, regional partners, township boards and commissions and councils, and then adjacent municipalities. So those will be happening in mid-March. So we'll have a lot to share with you at our next meeting about the findings from that. However, as Troy said, we have been able to start our interviews, and we started, the first interview with the DeLuca Homes team and Shady Brook Farms. So I don't know, Troy, do you want to share a little bit about that interview now, just off the bat?
Yeah, so we did meet with the whole team. So they even had their consultants in. It was a couple weeks ago in this room. So it very positive. In fact, I think what I was not expecting was how at least open they were in terms of this process. And factually, they were happy that this process was happening because I think it helps them solidify where they need to go with their project design and inputs. And they're happy, at least from what I gathered, very open to ideas that come out of this. So they have certain, I know, for example, they did get approval through your planning commission of the roadway intersection where Township Line Road, that area there, they did get approval. So there's certain things that are, I would say, are in motion in terms of being somewhat fixed in terms of that approval. Go ahead, Dan.
That's not actually an approval. That's a recommendation.
Recommendation. Of course, it comes to you as a body. So
yeah.
Again, depends on where that would end up on your agenda, right. But at least there was a positive recommendation. Thanks for the correction on that. But then also too, I think that was a more open discussion on where they might have commitments on certain end users from a market. So we really try to think about it from a developer's perspective. But I think the outside of it, and also too, Shady Brook Farms was here. Representative Dan Fleming was here from that. His consultant, John Kennedy, was here. They've shared all their information. So even trying to help to figure out, where their plans are going and how that gets integrated. So again, we're looking at that area plus the larger area in terms of what we talked about the last time, in terms of maybe some potential infill opportunities, if you will. But I thought that was a very positive discussion, open discussion. But I think it was, more important the fact that they welcome this process. Sometimes, developers would say, no, not interested. But I think I got the opinion they're very open, very welcome, and very excited about what this process is going to hold. So I don't know if Dan or Jim wants to fill in, because those two gentlemen with Dave was here with me too.
I do think it would be helpful if some of those interviews took place with this committee, so we get it, so we can ask questions as well.
Okay.
So we can integrate that. Some of us have met with that particular team in the past, and they've tried to push things a certain way.
Yeah.
Which is why there's the feedback that we provided them kind of made them want to take part in this rather than doing their own
I
thing.
think I've been through these processes too on the municipal side, just like
Yeah.
this, where we've worked with developers, but it really comes down to that there's kind of this balance, there's a market forces at play.
Mhm.
There's what community would like to have in terms of vision, but sometimes, it's like, hey, you literally, if you want it, it's never gonna pan out. I've seen that happen. But so I was just trying to say that we have to have that balance, and I think there's a lot of opportunity where we can use, potentially that as somewhat of a framework, but a lot of opportunity for improvement. And we talked about those things going through. So I know Samantha's in the process of scheduling interviews with other stakeholders. And I know in the future, we talked about with the DeLuca team that it would be good for us to keep on doing maybe. We haven't actually scheduled any future meetings with them, but the expectation is that we would have maybe some touch points to keep coming back and sharing information of how things are materializing. Because at the end of the day, we want these two processes to marry up to say, here's the community's vision. We've got that public input, that vision. Here's where their vision and where do we actually start seeing those meet and meld together? Because really what we want to see is that if that's a project going to go forward, we've got that input and we've kind of like helped pave the way so that the expectation from the planning commission, it as a government elected body, say, yep, this is the process we talked about. This is the expectation on the back end. One thing I'll talk about too is we talked about another project that we worked on recently where we used this master plan as the basis to gauge anything that comes in for that project or other projects to say, hey, this is the master plan the community committed to. This is what we're wedded to. So how does your plan proposals match up with that? And that's one thing that we're anticipating on the back end, that we would codify that vision through your zoning updates and use that master planning process as a drive. And my municipality, I think I talked about this the last time, it's worked beautifully. I mean, you may not have everything met, but at least it provides enough flexibility that when there is a certain use that comes in, we all can agree, yep, we've got to make a modification here versus a variance waiver. We can modify it through this process. So it's worked out great. So I think, not to drone on about it, but I thought it was a very positive conversation. I thought there was openness on their end and welcomeness to say, hey, we want this input on our side so we can do our job and make sure what we're proposing matches with the community's vision as well. Is that fair? Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think so.
Go ahead, Samantha.
Thanks for that, Troy. So we're always going to come back to the schedule that we shared with you last month. I put a star at the visioning and design workshop because, as Troy mentioned, we are still figuring out what, location and dates work. So we are going to shift that either into April or early May. So just flagging that now. But in terms of everything else, we are on track in terms of engaging the stakeholders this month and continuing with our work. So without further ado, the first thing on our thing of substance on our agenda is the existing conditions inventory and analysis. So as I mentioned in my email last week, we're not going to go over the whole report in this meeting. We really want to get to the visioning with Kirsten, and it's not fun to go over a document in a meeting. But we do want to provide this opportunity to kind of situate the report and then also hear any comments, questions, gaps that you think there, exist, or any other comments that you have. So real quick, go ahead, Troy. Or sorry, Alan, is that?
Alan, yeah. Do you want our comments at the end after you've gone through it or while you're going through it?
Yeah, so actually, I'm not going to go through the report. I'm just going to say right now that, for those of you that maybe I'm not sure if there's members of the public in the room or people that haven't gotten a chance to look at the report yet, but just briefly, this is not meant to provide recommendations or anything. It's just meant to be an inventory of existing conditions that kind of help set an understanding as we move to the visioning phase. And to do that, we have a few categories. So the study area context, market analysis, land use and zoning, transportation, utility, natural resources, and then historic and cultural resources. So with that, I'm just going to move right to kind of questions, comments, anything missing. I'm happy to bring up the report. I think we'd like to spend the next 15 minutes or so discussing. But go ahead, Alan.
Okay, I've got a few comments. On page 2, the end of paragraph 1, you mentioned the office research district converging with the R3, R3M zoning districts. And I look at the map and it should be R1 and R4 zoning districts
I'm sorry,
in
did you
that
say?
area. To the north is R1, to the south is R4.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh. Can I give some more comments?
Shoot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. On page 19, figure 11, it's tough to read the shading, but it seems to indicate the Shady Brook Farm property is residential and Jefferson Frankfurt Hospital property is residential vacant. Now, I
Yeah.
don't know if you meant to do that, but that's not right.
Yeah, so the existing land use is based on the land use category from the tax records. We can so we just took those land use categories and applied them to the existing land use map. Since those are pretty big discrepancies, we can change that. We're not going to go through every single parcel, and change little, parcels, but that's a good point about those. We can just call them vacant and agriculture.
Okay. On page 22, figure 13, why isn't the mixed use overlay zoning district shown?
So we actually don't have access to that layer right now. So we're working with the township to get that shape file
Okay,
and that layer, and we
curious.
will be adding that. But actually, that's a great point. In the meantime, we can add a note that says, we will be adding that.
Okay.
And Samantha, which
Okay.
one was that? Which overlay, Alan?
Mixed use
Mixed use.
overlay
Mixed use,
zoning
okay.
district. It's the
Got
one
it.
Prickett Preserve used.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. Couple more. Page 27, figure 15. The annual average traffic volumes on State Road 332, which is Newtown Yardley Road, they're not right. If you look at the PennDOT website on traffic counts, you'll see that the Yardley Newtown Road, it has like 32,000 vehicles per day west of Stony Hill Road intersection and about 37,000 vehicles per day east of the Stony Hill Road intersection. And also the vehicle trips on the I-295 to Mirror Lake Road, they should be higher. They're 8,500. So you might want to correct those.
Yeah, I'll work with our planner who put this together. It's probably a setting, whether it's looking, because they got it right from PennDOT, so maybe it was a different data set that they were looking at. So we'll make sure to confirm that and add that to the note.
Yeah, Alan, which data set, are you looking at the PennDOT 1 map data set?
I just went to their website. Yeah, the 2024 data. There's also data in our master plan, our 2019 master plan update in one of the appendices, and it has even more volume on the road.
Okay.
So
Yeah, we'll just double check that, Samantha, if it is a setting or something that's pulled from one map, but it is current. I mean, based on what we pulled from this
2026,
data.
yeah.
It's 20,
Yeah.
all right.
And
almost
just to
done.
point out, Alan, a lot of the data from PennDOT, it changes every time they do a traffic study, the numbers go up and down. So as long as we're sure that Michael Baker's using those latest, greatest, that'd be
Yeah,
good.
yeah. Well, yeah, take them from the side. That's where I got those numbers.
Well, do we, when they just approved the cut through of the road, did they have a traffic study for the farm edge? You said that
No.
that was just or a recommendation. Did they do a traffic study for that?
They're in the process of doing one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe I'm just saying, maybe we'll get updated figures if they're doing a traffic study. Okay.
Okay. In the transportation infrastructure roadway characteristics, to get understanding the roadway characteristics, it might be a good idea to give an idea of what the current level of service is at the intersections of State Road 332 and Stony Hill, and maybe Stony Hill Road and Township Line Road. Because the level of service will tell you what kind of delay people are having right now going through the intersection. And you could probably pull out numbers from the Prickett Preserve or Wright Farm traffic studies. I mean, if you want to provide that information, because that seems a lot more relevant than the number of accidents on the road, stuff like that. What's going on in the intersections.
Okay. And look into that.
Yeah, LOS level of service. It goes A through F, and according to timing delays.
No, we can definitely add that.
Okay. Last thing, a couple places you referenced a proposal, a mixed-use commercial, medical, office, residential proposal for the Shady Brook Farm area. And where is it? If it exists, shouldn't it be available?
So, Alan, I can jump in on that.
Yeah.
Alan, that has not been a submitted plan for anyone's review to date. There's just been a concept. So it's a concept that they've been talking about, and I'm assuming was discussed at the stakeholder interview. They have not received any sort of thumbs up or approvals or any even positive response from the township at all. In fact, because I will say personally, because of some of the stuff we saw, we said, you know what? Not a big fan of this. That's a big driver for this subcommittee, for this committee, to be honest, is to steer that ship. So we are not relying on that plan to drive anything, but they are stakeholders to provide information about what they think could be done in this corridor, if that makes sense.
All right, that's good. I've seen one version of that plan, and yeah, it was pretty dense pack.
Yeah, no, and yes, I'd agree. Alan, do you have any more? That actually segues into one of my comments. Do you have any more, Alan?
Nope, I'm done.
That's great.
Perfect.
Thank you.
That's so. If you could pull up figure 2, I think it's on page 4 of the PDF. It's referenced a few places in the report too, but I just related to that. When we look at this figure, this might have been made before our discussion last time, I think. When we talk about the project site, the figure is labeled study area, and then the legend has project site, and the project site looks to be limited to what I'll call the proposed Shady Brook mixed-use center. Yep. But in reality, the study area is much larger than that. Right. So from a project, I would not refer to anything as a project site, because that's not the scope of our discussions, right? It's the study area generally. And I know we talked, and this might be a good discussion point for the group. I know last time we talked about what encompasses the study area. So we should maybe solidify that in today's meeting. I'll throw out my opinion just to get I would include the Shady Brook area down through Lower Makefield Corporate Center, going based on the figure, how you have them labeled, so it's easier to see. The Flower Field mixed use, the commercial redevelopment opportunities, and then for purposes of discussing connectivity, I think I would also include Patterson Farm, Torbert Farm, and Oak. Sorry, my computer just moved on me. What's that called? Oakville Right Plan as the study area. I don't know if anyone else agrees or disagrees with that, but that was my initial thought based on what we've been talking about.
That Floral Vale Professional Park, just because from a connectivity perspective.
I agree. I agree. I missed that one. Yeah.
Doesn't that show all of that though? Or do you want a more condensed version of what you just said? Like, do you want to zoom in more?
Nothing here is labeled as study area, right? In the legend.
Okay.
So we have a project site and we have the historic district in the legend. I think in the legend, we need to clearly delineate the study area.
Okay.
I would remove the project site label.
Yeah, I can talk about that a little bit, and kind of our approach and why the map looks this way. So, in the study area, so this entire map is the study area, kind of context, because everything within this map, extending to the Holy Family University, things outside of even the township boundary impact, what's going on in the township. And specifically with that, what we identify as the project site, which is the, few remaining large development opportunities in the township. So we look at the study area to provide greater context, but then within that broader study area, we're specifically calling out that project site because that's the focus of the concept plan. So, because of the fact that it is relatively undeveloped. But real quick, just kind of thinking about this project, holistically, though, we have the concept plans, but then we also have the master plan, which is going to include recommendations and the infrastructure plan, land use regulations, which are going to apply to other areas in the study area as it connects to that project site. So that's why we explain that we kind of call that out as the focus for the concept plans, if that helps a little bit.
Yeah, so I would say do away with the project site being the focus of anything. That's not what we're trying to do here. We're not trying to do this for DeLuca and Shady Brook. We're doing this for the entire corridor. And if we try to focus on that as a project site, this township would tear us apart.
So Dan, just to clarify then, we came into this project just to be open that we were going to do concept drawings, like almost like this is what the community wants to see for the Shady Brook in that area.
Then that's the miscommunication.
Okay.
Is what it is.
Okay, so I'm just not arguing at all.
No, I
We
understand.
need to
I understand.
clarify and level set because that's exactly why we drew the map the way it was.
Yeah.
These other areas would be influenced in terms of, hey, we got the historic district of Edgewood. We need to think about what the zoning implications are. We need to think about what the area of influence, but our zero focus was that's the last remaining bastion of open space, developable land in the township. And how do we want to see that shape going forward?
Yeah.
And how does that influence other areas around that?
So
that's
if I can really quick finish, I think the concept of study area and how the study area influences the region, spot on, right? That's a no-brainer. You have to understand that in the broader concept, right? Broader scheme of things. Relative to what we're looking to do from looking at zoning and future development, there's also a lot of future redevelopment here that we've been seeing and we'll see it at our next zoning meetings, to be honest with you. So in that area, those are the areas that I just called out specifically as potential either development or redevelopment, where we want, as a group, we want to look at potential zoning changes, potential design ideas, whatever general concept for a look and feel region as the study corridor or whatever you want to call it,
right.
separate from a study area. That's our focus is on that area and how some of it is greenfield-ish, others may be not brownfield, but redevelopment areas. So we want to make sure those areas are included in that zoning. I'm calling it zoning review as more of a, but it's more than that. Yeah.
So maybe once we get to the Kirsten part of, I think it would be important to say which of those areas within this quote unquote study area that you verbally delineated would be, hey, this is where we think that through this process, we want to see like redevelopment.
Right.
What does that look like? Because again, we need to make sure that trying to master plan this whole area in terms of drawing is going to be like, hey, this is well beyond kind of the scope of what we expected this effort would be. We can do it, but it's just like, hey, but I think also too, so we understand what's already kind of in the pipeline. This is an approved plan so that we've not to know, like, for example, the 2 residential, go back to that map, Samantha.
Yeah. The Wright Farm development's approved.
Yeah, number 3 and
Basically
4
nothing
on
else.
that map, are they approved?
4 is not.
4 is not approved?
3 is Wright Farm, that's approved.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So I just want to make sure this is all good discussion because it helps further us define what our objectives are and what the expectations and outcomes would be. So this is helpful, extremely helpful. And this is where we started last month to try to figure this out. So maybe we can we'll keep on getting comments on the existing conditions study. And then when Kirsten starts off and Samantha, they can start to maybe let's hone in on like where we have numbers on that mapped out. But going back to your point, that study area, hey, these are like flower fields. This is an area we know is going to be redeveloped. We have to think about the redevelopment for that. And I think if we can highlight, here's our study area in general, but here's the areas of opportunity. Maybe you call it that for the lack of better
Yep,
word.
that works.
That's where we say, this is where we're going to focus, but that'll help us formulate what the actual recommendations are for zoning and other things.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Along those lines is, when you're looking at these areas like the commercial redevelopment opportunities, that section, that's an area we may want some renderings or drawings, right?
Mhm.
But there are other things that, like artist senior living, that section, that's fully developed, fully utilized at this time. There may not be any changes that we would envision for that area, meaning it could stay whatever zoning it is now or whatever. And we might only say, okay, as it relates to this parcel, transportation, walkability, that kind of stuff. So for the major parcels here, you can say, hey, we don't envision change in land use type.
Right.
But for other ones, like let's say Lower Makefield Corporate Center, Floral Vale Professional Park, the suburban office real estate space is challenging. I think that's an understatement.
Yeah.
There may be conversions for other uses, right? And that might not necessarily need to be white, or drawn out, but recommendations in the context
Sure.
of the how.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And for us to communicate this more generally is we can say to people, hey, this is our general vision for the area. Here are renderings for a couple of key areas we think either because it's greenfield or because it's likely and requires redevelopment, we'll have visualization. We might only have 2 of those or 3.
Sure.
But the rest, we might say, this land use is what it is now. We should be willing to consider a change in this land use based on economic conditions, because we're seeing at the corporate center and other places, we're fortunate in that way. And this is the process we might do to pivot, right? And that way, so when that comes up 5 years, 10 years from now, people can go back and say, okay, we have a strategy, or at least an approach.
That's great. I like that because that helps us get more focused on what your expectations are. If we've got, like we're going to do drawings on X, Y, and Z, and then other areas, it's more about policy recommendations of, hey, this is an office space. We don't know, but we should have the zoning that's going to make it flexible and open to whatever the market conditions might within realm of reason. But for example, we might say, hey, this really needs to be a mixed use because we want to encourage, maybe there's opportunity for residential. We don't know. See, what we're not doing, we don't assess the buildings in this process to know, can you actually convert that building to a residential unit? Maybe, maybe not. Sometimes the old buildings you can, you can't, but I think I know exactly where you're going, John.
Reasoning for that is, we don't want to be presented with these sort of take it or leave it
Right.
kinds of things. And what we'd rather have is for property owners to have clear insight in what their options are and a clear delineation of, if I want to do X, it's approved and it's going to be quicker, right?
Right.
As long as I do these things.
Right. There's an expectation set
Right.
on the back end, plus on the policy side.
Yep.
Reliability
Decision
is key, right?
Reliability, yeah.
Yeah, decision makers are saying, yeah, we agree to this, so there should be no roadblocks to the
Yep.
end, to the getting to the end zone, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with that. I totally agree with that. Samantha, does that help clarify on your end and Kirsten's end?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I think
that
what we
is a
need to do is
change
maybe,
from what we
Yeah, I
were
think-
looking at.
yeah, I think we need to focus, like, to John and Dan's point, and I know others might agree or disagree, but I think if we can identify of all that study area, which are the ones that we really think about need to have some, at least somewhat of a concept or illustration, just so that and again, how much detail, maybe it's not, we don't get down to the gnats, that level, but then we could take it more of a 60,000 foot, and this is a general framework of what we want to see.
Some examples from other places. that
Yeah,
may or may
that's
not
what I'm
be the
trying to
same.
kind of think about, do we zoom in and do all the detail, or maybe it's zooming out and saying parcels X, Y, and Z, this is the general concept and orientation, but maybe to your point, John, we're not boxing ourselves into some specific way that it's laid out. I mean, we might do it a little bit more on the, where the Shady Brook Farm is, because there's some really good ideas that are being born out of what's being developed in that process. So I think that's helpful. I think we've talked about that sufficiently. I think.
Can I just ask
Okay.
so we want a concept, so if the artists of Yardley that's the memory assistance, right? That, okay. So maybe they just go out of business, right? And somebody buys it and wants to redevelop it. Will this plan say when whoever comes in and purchases that now, and they're not going to put what's there? I mean, they're going to eliminate, there's no longer a need for that. Will this be able to guide them on what is allowed in this district?
Yeah, that was exactly, yeah.
That's exactly it.
This should basically on the back end, part of our work is to actually provide you with the recommendations or the amendments to say, this is the zoning that should be for this area now.
So a developer coming in, they're going to have access to this, so they shouldn't just throw something at us and say,
That's,
do a variance.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
right. That's
so
what-
this is
yeah.
what it's going to prevent. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
yeah, we're trying to get to the
yeah.
point, we all agree that this is what the vision is.
Mhm.
We should permit these types.
But
of-
it's not just Shady Brook, it's
Right.
anything that's within this
Yeah, we should have.
area that you're talking
Yeah, I
about.
think to John's point, some areas might have some illustrations to give a visual.
Yeah.
Others are going to be more policy-like.
Mhm.
From a land use permission standpoint, this is what you should allow. These are the types of
Mhm.
uses. This is what you shouldn't allow, but it gives that policy direction to know how you actually amend your ordinances, like zoning,
Mhm.
how that zoning map then changes going forward.
Really quick example, sorry. There's two projects going in front of our zoning hearing board right now that are reuses that are not zoned for that, right? And they're going for variances on things like at the CVS. Right? They want to,
I was, one of the things I was going to bring.
yeah, so that the CVS is right there.
It's on
And
the
they want to
right-hand
put in,
side of the map,
yeah,
right?
they want to be on, they want to put in a,
Car wash.
car wash, thank you. Wait, you know, and then there's another one that wants it's currently memory care facility of some type, but they want to put in a rehab center. Neither of those are zoned for those things, so they're going for a variance, but that's, something we want to.
And you
Provide
guys
guidance.
should watch the meeting the zoning meeting, which will be what, March 17th, and then April 7th is for the,
You were paying attention, Lance.
I just watched it online.
If I may, at this point, my understanding was this was visioning.
Yeah.
Meeting. So in order to do that, I would like everyone to keep in mind a couple of things. Some of them might be generated by developers, but some of them might also have to have some impact or input from supervisors and the township. Coming from the point of view of the historic village, I'm on the Harb, and that's part of why I guess I'm here. But if the importance of what the original concept was, is that it was a walking village. It was a place where it could have other types of program except a strip shopping center where you drive in, and the parking that's there is enough to service the businesses that are there. In general, there might be other walk-in shopping or in a strip that's around Flowers Field, some kind of shopping that doesn't necessarily lead it to be a strip shopping center. It could be that you go from one shopping center to another, and that what I'm leading up to is parking. One of the things that has always been left out of this is the general parking that might be the place where people would go up. There would be some amenities that would be next to the parking, maybe a park with play equipment or something on it, but there might also be the opportunity for people then to go to the walking village. So if there's some vision that might be maintained from before or incorporated now, I mean, it's not going to be going through the wall. The wall that's there, 295, is a wall.
That's right.
And it's going to be next to impossible to get any kind of filter across. So I suspect what you will come up with is something that happens on one side and something that happens on the other side, including what's going to happen with the farm or the other businesses that are involved there. But if we're going to do some visioning, it should include taking a look at what the plan was from before and seeing if that's still valid
Sure, yeah.
and what needs to be done in order to perhaps make that better or support it in some way.
You say the plan from before, we're talking about your
The,
plan?
the,
The T&D?
yeah, well, the overlay was one of them, but even prior to that, when the envisioning for the historic village and its inclusion on the National Register, those things were talked about, but never specified of where it could be and that kind of thing. So where it can be, how it should be incorporated and added to, or made a little bit different. Certainly not with a car wash.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, and to Stephen's point, when he mentioned overlay, so there's two different overlays in this general area. One is the Prickett Preserve overlay, the mixed use overlay, and then there's the T&D overlay that is
Right.
specific to Edgewood Village,
Which
you have on there.
We just
Yeah.
don't have the boundary there. for the
Gotcha.
mixed use yet. Yep.
Yeah. So, understanding how that came about and how that either is still good, sufficient, or needs to be improved or changed, whatever it may be.
well, you have an interview scheduled with my wife, I believe down the road. Dr. Hines will give you plenty of information about that, about the history of the development of the village and what might need to be done in order to preserve that.
Exactly why we're doing those interviews. It's more of a data collection, fact-finding information, and that's those perspectives. That's perfect. So, yeah, I think that just to add on to that, yeah, we definitely want to take a look at any of that information that we may not be cognizant of or have in our hands. That's part of what we're trying to do, is to do that inventory and look at that, and then
Right.
look at the context of what still is consistent and should be carried forward, and what's like, nah, that doesn't matter anymore.
Okay, Jim, you have those original documents. I guess you could make them available.
We
Yes.
we had them as well.
Okay, good.
Yeah, exactly. So actually, for the sake of time, as Troy said, we're going to be holding these stakeholder interviews. We're going to get a lot more information that might inform and we might add to this inventory. So there is time. If there are any other kind of comments that you had, that if you could send them to me via email, that would be really helpful so I can compile. But for the sake of time, and also because you're already getting there, through some of your comments, you're itching to get visioning. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen regarding the existing conditions and pass it over to Kirsten to lead us through the visioning facility, exercise.
Thanks, Sam. Is everyone able to see my screen here?
Yes.
Is that working for everyone? Okay, yeah, we've had a lot of really great input from you all, and we want to keep taking that. And what I have up on the screen is kind of where we started and what Sam just shared. And I'm actually going to turn my camera off, because while I'm taking your notes, I'll be looking down and it won't be a very nice view of me. But we wanted to go through getting more ideas, and I'm actually going to be turning all these existing areas off a little bit and having a bit more open visioning session where we thought we would go through this in 4 major areas of discussion. We want to talk a little bit about land use and density, and we can weave through and out, but just to kind of set the approach here for the next half hour or so, we'd like to talk a bit about land uses that are desired for your vision, and then we want to talk a little bit about what that means in terms of scale of development. I think that was something we were already starting to get to with what are the goals for a walkable center and a walkable village, and what are the kinds of scales that you're looking for. And then we want to have a discussion about the overall connectivity and how people move through the site. And then we'd also like to have a discussion. The fourth element of this would be talk about the character and look and appeal that you're looking for. And I have some of the notes from our last steering committee meeting. I know that we talked a lot about these big ideas of the vision for this overall, the vision that you're moving towards here. We want to be thinking of a place that's accessible and attainable, sustainable, integrated, and elegant were some of the words that came up last time. So I have those recapped as a starting point. And then we have talked about all these different areas, but again, I'm going to turn that off and open it up to a bit of a discussion and visioning session from all of you. If we start with that idea of land uses, we've been talking about how things might change in the future. We've been talking about the areas that might be more likely to change and some areas that may be less likely to change, some areas where you may be anticipating in the future, whether it's now or in the next 10 years, where would you like to have a framework in place that encourages and incentivizes the types of changes you'd like to see? That's, I think, where we'll start with this conversation. And Troy and Sam, add any other context if you'd like. This is where we wanted to start with thinking about what are the kinds of uses that you would more like to see or less like to see as this area changes, near term or longer term.
Yeah, just one point of clarification, Dan, just down in the right-hand corner, just so we're clear, you see the blue boundary line? Is that correct in your, or does that need to be pulled down into?
Probably pull down a bit to the
Yeah, where that
southeast
red-
with a, red.
Where it says
maroon one.
commercial redevelopment?
Yes.
opportunities? Okay.
Yeah.
So encompassing
we're-
that.
There you go.
There we go.
Okay.
Yep, we see that. Yep, you got it, Kirsten. Yeah.
And that's a very soft and fuzzy boundary, but more of a focus areas to be focused within.
Yeah, I think that fully encompasses the HC district too, I think. So that's good.
I'll give you an easy one. The northeast corner should remain farmland.
And it would be the quadrant where you guys own the parcel, right?
That's correct, yeah.
Farm area, yep.
It's called Patterson. Even larger than everything that looks like farmland there.
Everything that's in
It will
Patterson,
remain farmland.
Yeah, with
we like
the,
that
forest.
staying farmland.
with 183 acres.
It's
is
under
conservation
conservation easement, yeah.
But in
Mhm.
terms of the zoning, you want it to be ag, right? I mean, that's, you see that, you right now lease it out to.
We do. We're actually just put out an RFP for the next 5 years. 10 years.
If it's,
So, but you never envision that being a park or anything like that. It's going to be farmland.
It's agricultural conservation easements.
And
So,
that's
I just have a question though, I guess for Dan though, if it's fully ag though, would that affect any of the things for the Patterson Farm Master Plan, like any of the proposed uses?
So the 170 acres under agricultural conservation easement, that's going to stay as is in
Yeah.
perpetuity.
Yeah.
The buildings that are there, there's a Artists of Yardley, which uses the buildings, but not the farm itself. They so we can allow for community uses, I guess,
okay.
within ag
Farmhouse and everything like.
for the actual structures. Yeah.
Right, that's a good point. So I guess to explicitly say that those intended uses would be a part of the agricultural ordinance.
So for example, in the ag conservation zoning district, do you permit recreation uses at all, or what would be, or government uses? What would be?
Government uses more likely, nonprofits,
Okay.
community organizations, mulch piles. I don't know. There is one section in the front.
Or supporting the the agriculture.
Yeah.
I mean, if there is a residence that can be rehabbed as a good residence for one or more families that actually take part in the agriculture, that
Like farmhands or
Could be-
something like that, right? But yeah,
that could be considered, I imagine.
Yeah.
it's just good to know, to think about. I mean, this kind of gets down to a detail, like we think about uses in the context of these areas as well. That's,
Not that it's necessarily zoning, but when we talk about the master plan, that we have a master plan for this whole parcel that the township owns, where it talks about potential future uses, like where we could be flexible. I would pull that. So you can kind of, I don't think we're going to deviate from the master plan at all, but it'll be good to.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure
Pull those
that
together.
the changes of this potential zoning wouldn't
Yeah.
conflict with the Patterson Farm Master Plan.
Right, but the one thing I would say is that if you think of the area holistically, you have to think about walkability for the people that are part of that area within
Yeah.
Patterson Farm. So imagine, to your point, where we might have parking that's not part of Patterson Farm, but you could walk to the nonprofit activities, for example.
Or at the edge of
Right.
the Patterson Farm.
Right. And the goal would be to protect that visually as farmland, but also the nonprofit agricultural adjacent activities that are there. So,
What
yeah, that's.
use would you be, sorry, I'm just looking to dig into that a little bit. if you're preserving, if we're talking about some uses coming in and, you know, the need for accessibility and parking, but also preserving views, where would be the kind of the edges or the sides or the views that are most prominent to preserve?
So along those lines, where the views that are important is, imagine you're driving east on 295. That's the only preserved farmland you can see between Maryland and Connecticut, right? So visually, you want something that they can see the farm, right? So you wouldn't have anything developable. Well, first off, you can't because of the easement. So just as you won't have anything in the yellow area developable.
No
That's-
hydroponics.
No hydroponics, yeah. Just as a way of background, the community did have a company called Bright Farms take a portion of the Patterson farm. This would be in the lower southwestern corner of the parcel, where they had an indoor hydroponic farm that they used for the creation of salad stuff. So like Bright Farms lettuce and greens and what have you. It took a while for them to get that to work. But the community wasn't happy with this glowing orb at all times, even though it's technically an agricultural use. Is that the right thing for that spot? Probably not. There were other brownfields
I'll
they could
give
have used.
you an even better one.
Mhm.
I live in South Middleton and Carlisle. In Middlesex, if you guys have gone to the turnpike and got off at Carlisle at nighttime, you see a purple glow in the sky.
Yeah.
That is the marijuana farm.
Oh, cool. Okay.
That looked pretty similar.
It looks like the bat signal, and I guarantee
Right.
tonight when I
Yeah.
come home, the bat signal will be out for everybody.
Yep.
It is absolutely abhorrent. So I would say uses,
Wavelength for.
if maybe it's down to the degree of agricultural, we might have to carve out a specific zoning district. Because it sounds like what you're getting at, you don't want any industrial type of farming activity. You want more of the traditional crop,
Mhm.
grain, like traditional,
Yeah.
what I would call what you see there today.
Yeah.
But keep in mind too, that I don't think you want those industrial. I would say what the hydroponics is more industrial going. It's more
Yeah.
intense. So I think we need to be very intentional in terms of, it's because you're right. If we zone it ag conservation, it could be open up to any type of use. But I think we need to be more specific about what.
In general, something without a building that encases it
Yeah.
and makes it different from the land that has always been there.
Farm building, granary, or, some type of, pole barn that's supporting, whatever livestock or implements. That's all what we would traditionally like to see, right? And I think that's what I'm hearing, right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm hearing. So maybe it's like
and-
a working farm in a traditional sense is what
Yeah.
I think I'm.
But
getting at.
I highly recommend pulling in that master plan, because the master plan does contemplate a few things that are farming adjacent for the buildings. Because there are two separate farmstead buildings, sets of buildings. One is primarily empty, right? In terms of Satterthwaite, which we're trying to come up with a vision for those group of homes. And they're sort of in the middle if you didn't have all the yellow and were really zoomed in, you could tell. And then there's another set more towards the south.
Right.
That's the Janney homes, and that's where the artists of Yardley generally use for community art teaching events and stuff.
Well, we'll look at that master plan for sure in
Yeah.
more depth to interpret from that what we
Yeah.
think should be the kind of quote
Yeah.
proposed vision and continued use.
We have another subcommittee committee that's been driving that bus.
Okay,
That we
great.
want to make sure we use their
Yeah,
input.
for sure. Go ahead, Kirsten.
Yeah, I think Kirsten, you were more looking at what we're looking for in this area. And I just know even just over hearing people talk at the Giant, now that Rite Aid has left there. So a lot of where we're talking about the redevelopment, they're like, yeah, we used to be able to walk because there's thousands of people within walking distance of the McCaffrey's Giant shopping center. And they're like, yeah, we really miss being able to walk and get this or get that. And so a lot of things have closed and the walkability is no longer. Now they have to get in their car and drive over to CVS, to get their prescriptions.
Freeze down in here, right?
Yeah, McCaffrey's and Rite Aids. There used to be
Mhm.
2 Rite Aids, one in the McCaffrey Shopping Center and one in the Giant. So those are both gone now.
And you've got all this residential.
And all that residential there, and then you don't even see the half of it. If you extend the blue line down,
I
So-
drive in this way, so I can.
Well,
You're
there's-
talking
there's
about
probably-
walking from,
like the very bottom left-hand corner. If you just go down Township Line Road, you have developments that have probably 3,000 people right there. That's where I live. And there's Cornerstone, Palmer Farm, Brookstone, The Edge. You've got Heathergate, either in Middletown. You've got thousands and thousands of people within a mile. So it's outside of our scope, but there's literally down that blue line, if you continue to go, and there's 3,000 residents right there that could potentially walk to both of these areas, whether you're going up to the redevelopment areas or whether you're going to the farm, Shady Brook Farm. So that's fine. So we want the walkability, but what are we walking to, And even Prickett Preserve now, I live right there. I rarely go there. Number one, it was when the plans came out, it looked like this beautiful little area that people were going to congregate. Maybe you could grab something to eat and go to the park area and have a nice, little area. There's no parking. They've got valet parking. So if I'm going over there, I don't park one place and maybe my friend goes to Paris Baguette to get something and I go to Chipotle and then we might meet up somewhere. You can't, you can't navigate walking. There's too many roads to cross. If you try anything in that parking lot, you can't make a left-hand turn from CVS coming from Chipotle because that's the way you have to get out. There's too many intersections at everything. Yeah. So forget about I think going back to Stephen's comment about parking, if there was one location to park, people got out of their cars and went along one avenue, and it's a nice little, gathering place. You have benches and people sit and you visit a couple stores. Prickett doesn't have that feel. So that's the feel, whether it's in the historic village, you're walking along a road and you're stopping in stores, or whether you're now at Shady Brook, you have one section, you park in the field and then you come out and you want to congregate. So nobody's congregating in that beautiful place at Prickett Preserve because it's in the middle of no man's land.
This is really consistent with email I sent to Samantha yesterday,
Okay.
where I said, it's really important. It's more than just about bike paths and sidewalks, because there's bike paths and sidewalks and the plethora of commercial developments we have all over this area. And I think it's important for all of us to kind of go around. There are so many different areas that have good and bad that we want to copy, that we might want to emulate, and we also want to avoid. We got everything from Oxford Valley Road and Lincoln Highway and that area. And you have Yardley Borough, you have Newtown Borough, you have Newtown Township, which is completely different than Newtown Borough, and everything over in Princeton and Route 1. And I think
Versus Princeton Borough.
Borough.
Yeah.
And I think the point is you have to give, it's got to be a destination, whether you want people to ride their bikes more, whether you want people to walk, whether you want, when they're out of their car, how you make things accessible, the types of stores you want there, the types of commerce you want there, the type of environment you want there. I think it's really important for us to kind of nail that down early,
Mm-hmm.
because there's a lot of things out there we don't want that if we're not careful, we could just have. I mean, Prickett Preserve is, and I was on the planning commission when that went through, and I supported it, and it's not quite everything I thought it would be, but I still think there's some things out there that were good ideas, and there's some things, okay, we learn from it, and let's avoid that if we're going to expand it. And there's things down in Middletown and Fairless Hills that in my personal opinion, I think that's not what we want in this area. I think Newtown Borough is a great example of, I think, the kind of environment that we're looking for. Even a little bit of Yardley, and I think that points to the put the parking in one place. It's a place designed for you to get out of your car and you go clothes shopping. Hey, let's go get some lunch. Let's, go, do X, Y, or Z. Like there's 3 or 4 things. It's a destination where you're doing 3 or 4 things. It's not drive there, get in your car, go to Wegmans, and then even if I have to go to CVS, I'm getting back in my car, I'm driving across the road, getting out of the
Yeah.
car again.
So
Yeah.
that gets into some of the, if we were to do a postmortem on Prickett Preserve, one of the things is it's not truly mixed use. It's commercial, retail, and it's apartment buildings. And there's a walkway between the two, but they're not integrated. And I gave Samantha a list of YouTube videos. So Samantha, I hope you had a chance to view those. Where I went through types of development that I liked. And to your point, you're probably trying to get to something like the know it when you see it or you feel it.
Yes.
Potter Stewart reference. But that sense of something that's mixed use, that's engaging, that you want to walk in, right?
Mhm.
That you park once and enjoy the environment.
Mhm.
That's not necessarily, that's a combination of design, and that's why the drawings are important to help give folks a visualization of that. So when you talk about like your concern about the 2 Rite Aids going down,
Yeah.
and to be honest, probably one of those grocery stores will need to rethink their business model because of the competition. That gives us an opportunity to redevelop that area, right? So you can say, oh, the Giant would make a great marijuana or cannabis hydroponic farm. Probably, yes. But it could also be a really interesting mixed use where you have retail and living. And to do that, the trade-offs that we would be willing to accept, or some of us would be willing to consider, which would be increase the density, increase the height, reduce the parking, right? Give developers a clear pathway. If you build X, your pathway will be smoother, right? And this is what we would be up for. And then there wouldn't be any community that would have been pre-digested within the community.
Yeah, because I think what I hear a lot, and I know Kirsten and Samantha could chime in, but you're really sensitive to the design
Mhm.
of it, in terms of the use. We can think about, okay, mix of uses and how those mix of uses are designed and laid out and connectivity, so in a sense of place. Like I've gone through Prickett Preserve several times, and I would agree it's a little chaotic. Try to get through there. I wouldn't even know where. If I park at the Wegmans, I'd probably get in my car and have to drive somewhere else because it's not walkable, in my opinion. So I guess I always go back to places where I go to elsewhere, and I have one in mind, and I talked to Samantha about that. Yeah, you drive there, but when you're there, there's a lot to do, and it's very walkable because you park your car. You go to restaurants, you go to shops, and there's enough pedestrian areas where it's not just a 4-foot sidewalk. It's literally laid out as like you've got 10-foot sidewalks. You've got areas that it's inviting for you to like, I'm going to sit down because, my wife likes to shop. I might not want to go into that store. I want to go outside on the park bench and just relax. So I think that's the type of thing that I don't get that sense in Prickett Preserve as an outsider looking at that. But elsewhere where I've been, where thinking like, I've seen where I think I know what you're getting at. So I guess I want to leave it back to Kirsten to drive this, but where would that opportunity, if we think about where centralized parking, or is that the opportunity to say, hey, we can't reinvent the wheel on Prickett Preserve because it's maybe the cake is maybe almost baked on that one.
Yeah.
It's going to be a long time for redevelopment to occur because it's so new. Is that what happens? Is that what we try to think about the other side of the street?
So, yeah, if I could, I think east of 295, where we have Edgewood Village as the anchor, and east and west of Edgewood Village is a great opportunity to do that sort of borough feel, where you can, because they are looking to redevelop McCaffrey's. They're looking to redevelop. They approach, and when you do your stakeholder interviews, I'm very curious as to what you hear, because they approached us kind of with a napkin and a letter, but never really gave us a real plan several years ago. And it sounded kind of like what we're looking for, but we never got to see it. So I would say on some level, because Flower Fields has never truly been, the development has been completed, but I think it was originally envisioned to be sort of kind of that feel. So I think generally speaking, east of 295 would be developing some type of Main Street USA feel. I think of Freeport, Maine, because I grew up in Maine, where the LL Bean flagship is, where there's parking in the back, and then it's very walkable area with the park benches and food and shopping and all kinds of other stuff. Proper scale. And there's lots of other towns that do that, but that's just one that comes to mind. But I could see that east of 295 generally, paying homage and respecting the historic nature of that area. And then that's sort of also a lot of redevelopment there too. That's not new development, that's redevelopment. But I don't know if we go across 295, if that same approach could work because of the current heavy dependence on cars and how we get around.
And I think one thing that we've noodled on a little bit across 295 was where, that needs to be a place where you can park and also walk.
Yeah.
Within that.
Agreed.
Mhm.
Because, you've got Township Line Road. It's just, you're not going to have PennDOT come and actually put a pedestrian bridge over these things, right?
Well, we might.
Okay, where's the?
I've had that
right?
no, I've had I did have that conversation with our state senator, and he was
Okay.
he posed that idea.
Yeah.
So
Well, we can.
maybe.
So I guess it's one about what the realities are, right?
Yeah.
We vision it, but again, if you work hard at it and you advocate for it, anything's possible, right?
Exactly,
The
yeah.
Political pool. I've been there for that before. So yeah, this is great. I don't know, Kirsten, I don't want to keep on,
And just with we haven't mentioned residential, like is there a need for more residential? And if, when I was
Yes.
looking for apartments, Prickett has like 19 available. Now they start at 2,500 on up. Polo Run had 19 available, 2,000 on up. Yardley Crossing had 9 available, and there was about 20 scattered. But close by, there's Harper's Crossing that had 31 available. And then the new Oxford Valley Mall, there's 120. So I'm not sure that we need apartments. But if you look at what's for sale, so somebody's living in these apartments and they want to maybe purchase something, there's one home, condo available for under 400,000 in Lower Makefield Township. One, that's it. There's 6 that go from 400 to 600,000. Now, my numbers are no way accurate, but it's giving like an example,
based, yeah.
right? But if you go on Zillow or that, you're going to see 6 homes, 400 to 600. The rest, and there's not that many, but you're talking at these developments that we were just looking at, they're $1 million. So we're jumping from, there's just nowhere for people that are in our area, our young people that are renting can barely rent, but there's nowhere for them to move up. And we want them to move up. They're the ones that are going to be walking. So how could maybe you're doing condos and people are parking over there, like you're creating a whole kind of like Prickett was supposed to be, maybe, I don't know. But it was just interesting when I started to look at what is our need. And I'm not sure it's apartments, but maybe a lower entry
So
dense.
The commercial seems to
Condos,
be something
townhomes.
that can drive this if it's organized correctly around some kind of centralized parking that will create the potential for walking. But there's that soft bottom edge with the east-west Langhorne Road. Yeah, you're getting it there. That has a corner that could almost connect with the eastern side of 295 and Edgewood Village. If Edgewood Village amenities were allowed to extend, and maybe some of those houses could be redeveloped as commercial on the bottom, residential on the top, single lots that would take that line of the Langhorne Road and extend it so that it could enter into the office development that's there. And that office development might change in character over time as well and become kind of like a fair area that's at the bottom corner, the bottom left-hand corner of this site. So that's visioning.
no, that's.
Can we just clarify where on here you're referring to? I'm just not sure I totally followed. I followed the idea, but not quite the
Langhorne Road,
location.
yeah, the Langhorne Road is the one that's going diagonally from the top right to the bottom left. Keep going,
Right.
keep going, keep going,
Were
keep
you-
going.
were
keep
you
going,
talking
keep
about
going, keep
further-
going. That
Further south?
That soft
You're talking about down
connection
here.
there enters into something that might change eventually over a period of time. I guess most of those offices, the mostly professional offices at this point are filled on the other side of 295 in there.
Yep.
Most of them are pretty well filled, but with the proper kind of encouragement and zoning and changes to commercial space, that might be a very nice connection that would then do another point of connection rather than just going across Stony Hill Road.
Mhm. Can I also ask, because I think this is really interesting to get into, and you have, especially with the Edgewood Village and the ideas and the visions for this walkable village center and various areas where this could occur. When we think about a village main street, is there any input from the group here on whether you see that more strengthening along Langhorne Road or more along Stony Hill Road?
Yes, I
Or
would
bits
say
of both.
Langhorne Road has the best opportunity for that.
Mhm.
You know, with the long-term care facility at the, right at the intersection of 295 where the bridge goes over on Stony Hill Road, it kind of puts a real damper on that place. You know, you can't get beyond that, I'm afraid.
Mhm. But this spine here would be the one to kind of really emphasize trying to
That's
trying
correct.
to make the
Yes.
village main street and working out, both between
Right.
the vision
Right.
and then some policy changes, how we move towards strengthening that spine.
Right, and the residential spaces that are on the other side of that road could be encouraged
Yeah.
to be residential slash commercial.
Steve, the Flowers, that section in front of Flowers Field right there,
Yes,
that's been approved.
that's supposed to be,
Supposed to be mixed.
mixed use.
Yeah.
This is over here.
No,
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 no.
the part she hasn't drawn in yet.
North
So
of
that-
Yardley
Yeah,
Langhorne.
We
See where
didn't
the
quite get
parking
to
lot
that
is?
part.
Yeah,
No, it's on the screen. You just haven't
on
put
the
the red
screen.
and the green squares in yet.
This right here?
yeah. You see it says Village Navigable or Main Street on the other side.
On the other side of that.
That in there should be filled in with commercial development. On the front side facing
Yeah.
Yeah, right
Langhorne
along
Road.
here.
Yes, those
Right,
nice
got it.
little squares.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, they switch all the time. Who owns it? But yeah.
Yeah, are you
Currently.
meeting with who owns that property?
Yeah,
I think CT was on the list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He should be if he's not.
I know they've been unsuccessful with marketing that commercial piece that goes along Stony Hill and along Yardley Langhorne. One other thing to note, though, to the east of Stony Hill Road on Yardley Langhorne Road, that wooded area is Patterson Farm, and that is preserved land, so we can't really do anything there.
Got it. What's the frontage right here, right where,
That's the daycare, isn't that? the
Let me,
daycare?
let me,
That-
let me put a stop on that on Jim's last comment. I think if it's Patterson Farm and it has to do with agricultural, we're pretty well locked into that. But those beech trees, as beautiful as they are, some of them could go, and there could be some kind of connection that would provide a filter between Stony Hill Road and the farm.
Can you get from this area into the farm? Is this a walkable
No.
connection? Is that something to add more of? How is that? Laid out.
Bright Farms had the driveway.
Yes. Are those trees, like that wooded area, is that part of the agricultural easement?
Yes.
It is.
Another thing with the agricultural easement, you actually are not allowed to have trails through the farmland.
Right.
We had broached that idea to them as part of our master plan process. The only place where you would be allowed to have trails would be right along the roadway, parallel to the roadway within the right of way.
this is really a physical boundary at this point between.
Yeah.
Yes.
How do you get into the farmland then if there's a desire to be able to get in there or draw people in or let people?
You would
There
need
is a
to
road
go
that
in
went in
from
right
Mirror
away.
Lake Road through the entrances off of Mirror Lake Road.
Mhm.
And that area actually is not part of the ag easement. There's an exception for the two farmsteads and the land in between.
5.
In that area, you could go ahead and put in trails.
Do you have a GIS mapping that actually shows what the easements are, where those are, or unless we get,
I don't believe we have GIS mapping, but we have mapping.
Yeah.
And there's a few other things I'll send over to you, little edits that maybe aren't up to date based on the GIS layers that
Yeah.
are a little outdated.
Okay, that's great.
It might actually be in that master plan we were talking about where we have some figures, I'm assuming.
Okay.
Go with it.
And I'll sort of clip out the highlights so you don't have to go through 500 pages.
Yeah.
You're on a roll,
Would
Kirsten.
we-
Keep going.
So when we talk about this idea, I want to kind of look at this overall concept here and then how it might, what it might look like over on the other side of the highway as well. When we're looking at this kind of village concept, are you thinking in terms of density and scale, commercial uses that are 1-story, that are little village shops? Are we thinking things that may have a shop or resident, an office or residence above, 2 or 3 stories, a little mix of these things? Can we talk a little bit about the type of scale or the type of places that you've seen elsewhere that you have in mind for this kind of village feel and village character in this area?
That's what the pizza place has now. It's commercial on the first floor and residential above. And I think it's a reasonable alternative.
It's a good
So
scale.
2 to 3 stories, maybe?
I think that's a 2-story building, right?
Yeah.
That's a 2.
I think only 2 stories are
Two.
permitted.
The big thing is this, the scale of whatever we're doing to me needs to be smaller.
Village
We
scale.
don't need, I mean, grocery stores aside, whether it's Wegmans or whether it's McCaffrey's or whatever, those can't be that small.
Right.
Yeah, you don't want a 50,000 square foot box plot.
Yeah, when I would just, we're not looking, I mean, everything I think we're hearing about, we want a destination where people can walk to, and they're not gonna walk to Best Buy, I don't care where it is, right? You want a place where like, okay, I want to go there, go shopping, then maybe I'll get something to eat, then do something else with my kids, like play in the playground, like afterwards, like you want, it's more than just a drive, pick something up and go.
Yeah.
And I don't think big box stores and big footprints are conducive to that.
No, you're leaning more towards like a 10,000 square foot versus a 50,000 square foot.
And honestly, I'm like I'm looking at that woods, we can't, obviously, I understand we can't use it, but as an example, like if you could have like little areas like that would give people a reason to go, like if you could put walking trails through those, as an example, just an illustration.
Yeah.
Then maybe somebody might want to go for a walk and say, okay, after I'll meet a couple of my friends, we'll go for a walk, then I'll go to Edgewood Cafe for lunch afterwards.
Yeah.
But I think as important is also like Buttonwood Park down in Yardley. They mix use as far as on the weekends, they have the farmer's market, whatever. So that you probably can't do that here or even at Prickett Preserve because that area could have been used for a farmer's market, but there's no parking. So for future, that's what we want. It's someplace where you can use on the weekends and we're losing Shady Brook Farm that does that for us now.
Actually,
So
the
farmer's market maybe
would
might be a use. And this all fits really well with the Edgewood Village concept that you have, the historic center, the plan that's been done. And also kind of the irregularity of some of the blocks and the streets that you have here, which creates those charming moments and shifts, but also gives you some more limited spaces for building. So I could see with the village center character, you might be moving towards a mix of some buildings that are a little closer to the road, but also some that are a little bit pulled back with little seating spaces in front that give you that not incredibly hard edge to the street. But a little scattering of village type buildings. Does that sound like what you all have in mind?
Pretty good for me.
Yeah.
What about if you look over at the other side of the highway though? Because we do have a fairly large focus area here and I think this idea sounds really compelling and it really suits with the historic character and the uses and the scale that you already have here. But that's also that idea of a walkable center with the village core is not something that you can spread over, a whole mile, right? That's something that you spread over a centralized few blocks. You have your cute, quaint village Main Street. What do you have over on the other side of the highway? Let's say that this were to change or evolve. We talked a little bit about that office park changing. What do you have in mind there?
Well, that office park, that big L of office buildings that are 4 stories high, has an awful lot of parking that's unused around it.
Yeah.
It's also potentially redevelopment type of stuff that might be looked at I don't know what the owners are saying about that though.
Well, they actually did a major redevelopment 6 or 7 years ago. They took that Lower Makefield Corporate Center, which is now branded as Makefield Crossing, just like the other one to the north, and they eliminated parking. They put in sort of amenities along that pond. So they have like a deck.
Yeah, it's
and
nice.
Yeah, they did.
it's kind of a nice place. I've actually gone down the road, had lunch, and then went there and ate. But there is an excess of parking.
What's the occupancy there?
The occupancy on that section is 80%.
80%.
more.
So,
The north campus, it's much lower. Years ago, it was reversed. They had 80% in the north, like 20% in the south. Now it's flipped, and they're trying to,
That's where the Dunkin' Donuts is.
yes, the Dunkin' Donuts has dropped in tenancy,
It's up in.
whereas the south has increased. It literally flipped from the way it used to be.
So the Dunkin', the other office park, Kirsten, is at the very, just north of Wegmans.
Yeah.
Like a preserve.
And they're both
Mhm.
called Makefield Crossing North and South.
Did they have a plan, Jim, then for the sea of parking that they have there now on this? Where it's 80%? I mean, is it during the daytime when it's 80% occupancy, there's still a sea of parking?
Yes.
yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, and I think when they still had to get permission to have less parking than our ordinance says is way too much parking. It's a 1980s ordinance that's out of date. It doesn't comply with IT standards of how much parking you should have. It just has an excess of it. And I think for one or the other, or maybe both site plans, they had to get the Board of Supervisors to allow for the reduction of parking, which I know we strongly supported because it was just ridiculous. And to their credit, they said, yes, that makes sense.
Would it be worth, and I might get jumped for saying this, but would it be worth like maybe talking about getting rid of parking minimums in certain
Yeah.
ordinances?
I have been advocating in all my ordinance, we don't know what the parking should be. You know, that's, you know, it's one where.
That's a really big trend in planning.
This is the classic case where you thought the parking standards were right and it was overparked and this is what you're left with. And what I found to be more receptive, at least a lot of municipalities, boroughs and communities otherwise alike here in PA, that, hey, just like you do a traffic study to determine what the impacts, you should do a parking study.
Yeah.
That parking study should say, this is what the market is telling us the parking needs to be. Because a developer intuitively wouldn't want to overpark because it's money.
More money.
Not the stormwater issues.
And more impervious too.
Because it's going to limit their effective operations of that business. The idea is they're coming back to say, this is what we need, but this is what it's based upon in terms of comparables, and here's a study. And then the language in the ordinances I write, it gives the elected officials, the governing body, you let your engineers evaluate that and you come to a conclusion or consensus, this is what we agree the parking should be.
Okay.
So that's one way to say, we don't know if it's maximum or minimums, but one that I found receptive is doing that.
In general, the parking should be placement care, not necessarily amount.
100%. The way I look at it is what I've learned on the planning commission over the years, like left to their own devices, developers have products and they design them a certain way and that's the way they do it. There's not, I hate to say there's not a lot of creativity.
And I would say on that part of that strategy is too, you don't require every project to have parking. You got shared parking opportunities and that's the other part of it. You got shared, but you also work in incentives like bicycle parking. If you can provide other amenities, other ways, actually, you can reduce parking. So you want to have a variety of strategies in there, but those strategies shouldn't be based upon this use shall require this number of spaces off street. You should have on street, off street, shared parking. You should have all of that. It's like your energy strategy. It should be all the above,
Yeah,
right?
and with this, since we're looking at doing a sort of a Main Street USA concept generally, we have to look at not only private parking that all the individual developments provide, but we should also be looking at public parking opportunities.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully change the ordinances.
no, just
Mm.
no, they just to make, because if let's say I'm making this up, but let's say in the bottom right corner where you starting to look like Christmas here, all the green, right? But at the bottom right corner, you have lots of individual small buildings, right? Where we like Main Street, like any Main Street does.
Right.
Not every, you might have a shop there that 50 people might want to go in, but there's no way you're going to get 50 parking spaces or more right in front of that. So you need to provide centralized parking lots that people can park and walk.
Yeah.
That way, so you don't have these massive parking lots between each building. That's how we get the suburban sprawl. So we could look for either private private parking garages. I'm not saying that. Or public parking opportunities.
A good
or some balance of the two.
Sorry, Dean. A good example of that would be Suburban Square in Ardmore. They do parking very similar to that.
Yeah, I used to live there.
Yeah, it's a great, I grew up in Havertown, but it's a great area. That
Yeah.
could be good looking at.
And that's why I mentioned Freeport earlier, because they have those parking lots behind everything.
Yeah.
Similar
I
concept.
don't know the ownership of it, but like you go to Newtown Borough and like when you need to park, sometimes it, if it's a popular place, it might be hard, but the parking is all consolidated. You know where you need to
Yeah.
drive to look for a parking
Well,
place.
Yardley Borough is infamous
Yeah.
for this.
Yeah.
There's one shopping center that it's private parking, and there is the
Guard,
what we-
guard.
I use Newtown.
Yeah, he sits in the parking lot with his stick and yells at you if he thinks you're gonna walk out of that parking lot, not to go somewhere else. It's terrible for we don't want that situation here is what I'm
And
getting.
I just want to clarify, because I feel like I'm bashing on Prickett Preserve all the time, because the concept was really good and I want to use it. So if we're looking to develop that area, I think we have to look at, we're combining both. Like we want to use that whole area. So maybe now there's parking over by Shady Brook.
Yeah.
Like now we've got it right. People can walk over to that beautiful area where there's going to be events. So I'm not saying we're done doing that kind of events. But even like we were just talking, like with a farmer's market, it might be in the morning before the stores open. So maybe there is additional parking, but bring that into the new concept.
And I think one thing that we at least teased out of the meeting when we met with DeLuca, and again, it goes back to what the planning commission at least recommended,
Mhm.
was there seemed to be, of all that area, that seemed to be a transition where if you could try to move pedestrians across from one side to the
Yeah.
other, that location right there seemed to be almost the most ideal place to try to incorporate some type of pedestrian connectivity.
Right.
Is that fair? I see some positivity to that.
Yeah.
That might be one,
Generally.
think about it going forward, this visioning
Yeah.
process might have some benefit early on. When you're looking at that, what they recommended, maybe that's another thing to
Well,
start.
and for that particular one, that's something even back at Prickett Preserve time, we were talking about connectivity between Edgewood Village and Prickett Preserve, where you have two separate walkable areas, right? Because not everyone's going to want to walk a mile or two, right? But you have two separate areas that are short walks, and if you're like me, you want to do that longer walk, you can do it relatively safe. You could ride a bike, you could walk it. You could get between the two if you had a place to park your car, and most people won't, but there's the opportunity there. And then you have enough walkability and parking.
Well, would-
Depending how old you are, you could also jump on the jitney.
I know we're getting
That's
near.
old.
You go, that's fine.
Yeah.
I think this is excellent.
Any future meeting date's good for me. Just
Okay, I think this
Yeah.
is a positive step forward. I mean, I don't want to cut off the conversation, but I know we're trying to be focused
Yeah.
on time tonight.
Yeah.
Kirsten, what else do you want to try to advance or tease out of the conversation for visioning here?
I think this was great, and I know we are about at time, and some people needed to go. I'm hoping that what I've been capturing here is more or less capturing the direction. I know there have been a few different ideas here and there, so please do, I guess, just share anything with Troy, who's in the room there, or with Sam in follow-up. Let us know if there's any further thoughts you have that tie into this. But I thought this was a really great conversation, and very, very productive to hear all of your ideas starting to flow.
So just, again, to maybe go back to what we thought, where we start and expanded that is, are we feel like as a committee, we're moving in the right
I
direction?
think we're
We're not there yet.
I think we're singing from the same sheet music right now.
Okay. And I want you to be honest too. I don't want you to give us lip service. I say, no, we need to focus more on this, but
We picked a committee that's pretty open and honest and
I think
knows.
Jim, you were gonna say something? John?
Yeah, we hadn't talked too much about the Shady Brook redevelopment stuff, and to kind of give some vision around that. And part of it is, and this discussion illuminated how much is in Edgewood Village of value that's walkable, that could use some help. The interesting opportunity about that parcel that's Shady Brook Farm is it's entirely open, meaning you don't have existing infrastructure to mess with, which gives you a chance to provide and correct some of the Prickett Preserve mistakes, but have something that's designed in an elegant, unique way.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about Peddler's Village for a moment.
Peddler's Village?
Yeah, have you heard of it?
Yep,
It's one of the, it depends on your perspective. Huh?
Go visit. It's eye-opening.
Yeah. Yeah, so, but the design when that was built was to be modeled after Carmel by the Sea, California. So the visual elements of walking into this sort of like forested area is very much like Carmel by the Sea. I think it's kind of cool. Again, that's a design choice and element that may not fit in this environment. So I'm not prescribing that look and feel. But what's interesting about it is how it's scaled in a way. And I think you could take something that has similar kind of retail focus, but put housing in it in a way that would be really kind of unique. And I would be willing to trade density to get
Same.
more housing if I had something that was walkable, unique, and experiential for visitors. And that could fit to drive what's remaining agritainment from Shady Brook Farm, and it becomes a destination. So Shady Brook generates, I think, 25 to 50,000 people for the light show, right? For Christmas time. Similarly, could you make that in the same way Lahaska is or Peddler's Village is? Tragically, my mom really loved that place. I had to go all the time, every frickin' festival. So I've seen it, and hopefully this isn't being streamed. But the point, huh? Yeah, frickin' fine. I've been nailed for worse. But that element of what makes it an engaging place, it appeals to certain people. It becomes a destination. So I think if you look at, I think Peddler's Village is one of the top 5 tourist destinations in southeastern Pennsylvania. You'd never know it, but everybody goes there. Can we make something similar, not to that intensity because the traffic won't provide it, but something that's desired in that way so that people have this thing of like, if I'm like, I want to live in a new place, why would I want to choose something like, oh, well, I can roll out and get a cup of coffee? That's why I sent Samantha all the little YouTube videos. There's this place cul-de-sac in Tempe, Arizona. I toured it. Fascinating. You had first level owner-operated retail. So you could live and provide retail. Why is that helpful? Personal care. Like if I want to go see a barber or hairstylist, what have you, boom, do my hair and nails. Same unit, the person can live in it. And that was on the first floor. And then there was 2 levels higher of places to live. They had no resident parking. They had a parking section for visitors, but not for residents. Now it's right on a train. So it's a different strategy. But they had really well integrated amenities along with the retail. And it was a unique experience. There's something design-wise that we could do that's real mixed use, not the Prickett Preserve bogus mixed use, that's why this design is so crucial. Because we're not getting it from
So let
developers.
me ask then where is it called the tomato pie or the?
Yeah, Di Lorenzo's.
Yeah, De Lorenzo's. Is there residential on top of that?
Yes,
There is, yeah.
Is it
Yeah.
occupied?
yes.
They have 2 apartment units above.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, that's good to
Yeah.
know, because I think that's
Yeah.
always the challenge. You can propose those things, but what does
Yeah.
it work?
And that's actually been the challenge going forward. They're good with those 2 units, but for the other part that they've not developed, they've struggled with trying to get someone to come in with apartments above. They just haven't been able to find people because supposedly commercial people aren't keen on that concept necessarily.
Yeah.
But mixing them together, I think, is a good idea. Like have a business or 2, then a couple of homes,
Yeah.
and maybe another business might
But-
work.
The idea of mixed use may not be necessarily vertical where you got commercial retail, but it's integrated in versus like
Yeah.
all the
Well-
residential's here and all the commercials down here.
Yeah. Or think of like Arlington, Virginia, right? The different neighborhoods in Arlington, like Shirlington and Courthouse and all those sections. That's much denser, I think, than what we would want to do here. but I live there too. Um,
Love orange.
it very walkable. You can do anything there. Had an apartment there. I worked there, and plenty of stuff to do after hours there, and shop. All the shopping, all the other stuff. And people would visit there that didn't live there, and it wasn't just, at that point I was early 30s, single guy, but there were families in the neighborhood. There were older folks, and it wasn't.
Down in Alexandria.
Yeah.
Beautiful down
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. One thing that hasn't been mentioned, and I can't imagine why, is that there's an interchange with a major interstate highway
Yeah.
that is right next door to this,
Oh, yeah.
that is going to be the selling point for all of us. So if we get the right kind of developer in here who can see the potential.
It to your point, that's why I think last meeting and even earlier why I personally was so adamant about making that study area the study area, because to me it is a TOD. It's a transit-oriented development because of that interchange.
Yes.
So I agree with you wholeheartedly.
That's also, to me, in my opinion, that's also the danger. Because that is from a developer standpoint, that's a typical area where they know how to do it. They have the formula and they're gonna push for their formula. Big boxes, get the traffic in off the highway, get it back off the highway. And
Commercial.
it's everything. You go any town in America and it's the same stores that look the same, that are lined up the same. And I think what I hear her saying is we don't necessarily want that. We want something different. We want, even though we're in this area that's conducive to that, we want something that more like one of our old boroughs provide.
Yeah, and that's why we're doing this
Yeah.
whole thing, is because we get the opportunity to set the tone and set the zoning ahead of time,
Yeah,
so they don't come in with
But-
big boxes.
But this interchange also is the reason for the success of the light show, the holiday light show. People come to that show
Yeah.
because they get off the
We get to.
highway, they go through the thing, they go home.
Hey, we'll wrap up.
Yeah.
Just
Oh,
one
yeah.
thing I would ask, I know we've talked about a lot, that there's a lot of things you like and a lot of things you don't like about Prickett Preserve. It would be great if we kind of had the pros and cons list, because I think that's a little bit, we got a lot of other ideas for inspiration, but that's one I keep coming back to. Like, what we saw in a plan looked really great. What came out of it, some of it really didn't come out. So it'd be kind of nice to know exactly what were the pros and cons to that.
Yeah.
If you would kind of do it over again today, what would you do differently? And that's me, do we have to answer it tonight?
No, yeah, no, it's.
We know that, I know we have
Well,
answers. Yeah.
Are they done with the build outs? Have all the parking spaces open, all the stuff open? So we can
I
see
was
what
just
the
going to
posts
make the
look like?
comment
Yeah, I think.
that, a lot of the criticism of Prickett Preserve, like they've been under construction, they've had obstacles in the way.
Literally.
They now, I believe today, they either got or were rejected for their CO on the very last unit out there. If they didn't get it, it'll be in a
It's
couple of
soon, yeah.
days. But they are now basically done out there. They still have a little bit interior work on the stone house that's there. But now, in the next couple of months, we can truly see how it's all going to work
Yeah.
and act. I know, like, people talk about, well, there's not a lot of parking. But if you park just on the other side of the buildings where the main strip is, there's lots of parking. And you just walk 150 feet. But people are so used to, I want to park right in front. They'll park in the giant parking lot, the 15th spot away, 150 feet, but they don't want to park
Or creatures
in another area and then walk 150 feet.
So point being is this spring we'll actually get to see how well it's working or not working.
Okay.
So we're right
We're
there.
that close.
Yeah.
Yes, I wish it was done 4 months ago, but it made life a lot easier.
Yes.
Well, Samantha, Kirsten, good information.
Yeah, this was great.
All right.
Can we
This is
send
great.
you
Thank you so much.
comments? Can we email you comments? Would you take those? Because I have a
Absolutely.
comment I didn't get a chance to say, but I'll email you.
Alan, yeah. Anybody that has comments, you can email them directly to us. I would just ask to copy Dave, Jim and Dan, so they're just aware. It's kind of like the staff team.
Yep.
Because day to day, we communicate with them all, like every day, all day, almost, right? So yeah, absolutely, Alan and others, just please send those in
All
for
right.
sure. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Nice.
Thank you so much. Have a good
Good
evening.
night.